Well, I've got to admit, I've got our next guest under slightly slight false pretenses. We are going to talk a bit about the media, but I'll be honest, our discussions with Chris Trotter often get what I would, the New Zealand equivalent of virality. Because Chris, as a media observer, a political scientist, often sees things, I think, in a way that many of you identify with. And I wanted to talk to him not just about the media, but also about Anzac Day and what it signifies, because we had an amazing response yesterday when we just talked about issues Anzac and what it means in the context of modern New Zealand, and how an awful lot of us would know nothing really about British Empire and World War I and World War II. A lot of us come out from ethnicities and backgrounds that don't share that tradition or don't have personal Anzac stories in our family tree. So what does it mean these days, and how is it going to be covered? And I know a lot of you, for example, interested in whether or not the the War Memorial in Auckland at the museum is going to be lit red. Apparently they've got technical problems. They can make a rainbow, but they can't make poppy red. Anyway, to discuss all of this and the media is Chris Trotter. Chris, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Sean.
So, look, you have my disclaimer. I also did want to talk about Anzac Day with you because it is tomorrow, and I think it's a huge day still for New Zealand. Though I was thinking about it, Chris, a hell of a lot of New Zealanders and people who live here probably don't have the same perspective on it as, for example, I do, because I know family members on all sides of my family who were involved in essentially fighting for the British Empire at some stage.
Indeed, as do I, Sean.
Yeah.
Both my grandfather, who was at Gallipoli, and my father.
Hey, Chris, I'm going to have to stop you here. Hang on.
Are you okay?
No, your phone is just absolutely odd. Oh, is it me, maybe? Is it you fine to you, Ben? Maybe it's me. Okay, maybe it's my headphones. Oh, no, we'll keep going, Chris.
I'm fine. We've
got you. That's cleared up. There was something at our end. All right. So, Chris, you can, like me, look at Anzac Day and go back and say, okay, I get that. There's a grandfather, there's a great-grandfather, an uncle or whatever. But surely there are more New Zealanders who don't have that these days.
Increasingly so. And if our immigration policies remain essentially unchanged, in 20, 30, 40 years, I would say close to half New Zealand will have no familial connection at all to the events of 1914, 1918, 1939, 45.
How then do we collectively commemorate Anzac if we don't have the unity that we used to have in terms of our shared experience?
Well, what it will take, I think, Sean, is for a government, a leader, neither the government of today nor the leader of today, I sadly suspect. But hopefully at some point in the future, we will have a government and a leader that can enunciate clearly what it means to be a New Zealander, what the rights and the responsibilities of all New Zealanders are, and what this country hopes to do in the world, hopes to be in the world. And if we've got a government and a leader sometime in the future with the power to do that, the personal power to do that, then perhaps we can gather in all the many ethnicities and religions and ideologies into a single body of allegiance to the country in which they.
Would you agree with me? It is the most important of our holidays.
Oh, undoubtedly. Certainly in the last 20 years, Anzac Day has matured into a genuine national day. But you are quite right to point out the demographic changes that are taking place largely through immigration, which are in a sense diluting the unity that was built around Anzac Day really over, probably a bit longer than 20 years actually. I think we go all the way back, to the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
And since then, that 30-year period, it really has been quite remarkable.
Yeah. Because in the 60s and 70s, there were long hairs and hippies and peace signs and everything. You're probably involved in some of that, Chris. And it seemed to me, I said, in my young adulthood, we kind of said, nah, not an Anzac Day. Let's all just come together for this. And it changed.
Well, yes, and I think it was part of the generational conflict of the 60s and 70s, the RSA generation, as Colin James, one of our great journalists, dubbed them. The RSA generation and as you say, the long-haired hippie generation did not get on. And of course, they clashed at a time when there was a war in Vietnam, a televised war, a really televised war, not an embedded, this all has to be cleared through the proper authorities kind of televised war, but, where the crews went out with the soldiers and they sent back the real footage. And we all saw people screaming in pain, and we saw blood everywhere, and we saw tiny naked girls running down a road screaming and
burning alive.
And war came into our living rooms in a way it had never done before.
All right, but we've kind of got past that. Here is my fear about tomorrow. We are living in a time where I think we have a new generational split. And I'm thinking, from the river to the sea, Palestinian flags, it's genocide. That could all rear its ugly head tomorrow.
Yes, it could. I think it would be a really big mistake if the organisers of the pro-Palestinian cause interrupted Anzac Day. But people make mistakes all the time.
Yeah, okay. So you would say it would be a misstep to use this day, the renter mob crowd, the Mintos of this world would be making a big mistake if they decided to take on Anzac Day, as it were.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It hasn't lost that capacity to unify just yet, and people trying to piggyback on Anzac Day are not going to get a very warm reception.
Yeah. Chris, well, originally I got you on the false pretense I wanted to talk about media, but I have been thinking what you have made, and I know you've done some writing on it. I don't know, the saving of News Hub. It's not really. It is the reformation of 3 News, from what I can understand. I saw an interesting story yesterday. Warner Brothers Discovery have registered the trademark or the name 3 News. But if they had been concerned about having woke news bulletins and being perceived as woke, Chris, what on earth are they doing getting stuff to make their news from them? Because that would seem to be going from bad to worse.
The same thought occurred to me, I have to say, Sean, when the news came through. However, as I noted elsewhere, Sinead Boucher arrived in a minivan, not a bus. It's going to be a very small, very truncated news operation that goes on air.